Greetings brothers, today we're looking at the best way to get those multi-meltas onto the tabletop in 9th edition as a Blood Angels player. So I'm John, the Blood Angels Commander, and I am pumped to tell you about the best way to get multi-meltas on the table. This video started as land speeders vs ATVs because we really had so many questions about that, but the tier videos we've been doing with Tony and Mark recently have been so well received, and there's been so many comments about the fast attack and the heavy support. So yeah, I just felt like I had to include everything, and what we've done is we're going to break down exactly like damage per 100 points, survivability per 100 points, so we can see the clear picture as like what is going to be the most efficient to put on the tabletop in terms of raw points cost, and then what's going to be the most efficient in terms of how it synergizes with your current army list. So there's an absolute ton of data, so please stick around, and if you get any value out of today's video, I really appreciate if you hit the like button. Remember, likes are free and they do actually help the channel out ever so much, so they're very much appreciated. So later in this video we're going to be giving away this awesome chapter champion, and he was painted by Evan over on the Origin painting channel. I'll put a link in the video description below, so if you are a channel member you'll have a chance to win this, and if you're not a member there's a big join button underneath all my videos so you can join and get a chance to win this model. So if we start and think about land speeders, and we're talking about multi-meltas here, so your land speeder is 60 points, it can be a squad of up to 3 and 10 points more to get the multi-melt on it, so really we're talking 70 points. And for 70 points you get an 18-inch move, toughness 6, 6 wounds, so it feels like it's going to be reasonably survivable. And also the whirlwind is so important right now, I talk about it a lot in Blood Angels, suppression fire, so if you do have a whirlwind, if it's ever within I think it's 18 inches of an enemy unit, then your whirlwind's going to get +1 to hit as it's got data linked telemetry. So another small bonus for taking those land speeders. I think the reason people are loving land speeders or considering land speeders is because the Sanguinary Priest went up a bunch of points, so he's now 155 points per model, and I guess some people are thinking that maybe pushed the Sanguinary Priest a little bit too far and he's not as competitive as he once was. I have run him 3 or 4 times now since he went up in points, and I actually still think he is valuable. You know, as long as you're rezzing 30 point models or more every turn, I do think that there's still a place in our list for the Sanguinary Priest. But if you want to try land speeders and a tech marine, I think it's totally valid, so this is why we're making this video. However, people also were asking about the Invader ATVs, and they do move 14, same as the attack bikes. They do have toughness 5, and they do have a good amount of wounds, and it's 8 wounds. Now what's interesting with Invader ATVs is they also have a twin auto bolt rifle, so that gives them 6 strength 4 AP0 1 damage shots, and they come in at 85 points if you include the multi-melta. And they get 4 attacks, which I didn't actually realise, so they aren't too bad actually if you need to charge something with Blood Angels, in that after turn 3 you'd be getting 6 attacks per Invader ATV, which is reasonably decent, and it would be -1 because of the Salt Doctrine. And they can obviously turbo boost. I don't really know why you would turbo boost. I guess if you do want to turbo boost, at least you can still shoot your twin bolt rifle, right? I guess you have to give up your multi-melta, but when you do turbo boost that gives you that guaranteed 20-inch move due to you know, not rolling the dice with the advance. Okay, so let's move straight into their survivability, and what I do here is I factor out the number of hits, so it's just wound rolls and save rolls, and then these are the values. So what I can see straight away is that the Invader ATV's toughness 5 and 8 wounds in most situations is actually going to be better than the 6 wounds and 6 toughness of that land speeder. Now, I mean, that's maybe obvious, I guess, because like toughness 5 and 6, a lot of weapons will usually be like strength 7 or strength 8, so there's almost going to be no difference. But it is nice to see it as clear as day that the Invader ATVs are actually quite survivable. You know, we also mentioned that they have those bolt guns, and we also mentioned that they have a bunch of close combat attacks, so I'm expecting them to do well as we move through. Now, the attack bikes are basically half as survivable as an Invader ATV, so considering the ATV is 85 points, attack bikes are 60 points, they're only about 40% more expensive, and they're twice as survivable. So the attack bikes have a ways to go in the shooting to catch up here. The one other thing, I suppose, is that land speeders and the ATVs do explode, whereas your attack bikes will not explode, or they can explode, I guess. So let's keep moving on. And then the next main thing to work out is obviously just raw damage output. And this is sort of my standard slide where we take a bunch of different enemies at different strengths and toughnesses, and you can see that all in the first 3 columns. And then I've worked out the damage from multi-meltas, the twin auto bolt rifles, and then the twin bolt guns. So obviously the land speeder only has a multi-melta, so the column in blue is just the damage from a multi-melta against all these things. An Invader has, you know, the multi-melta and the twin bolt rifle, so we've put that down, and then the attack bikes have the twin bolt gun and the multi-melta. So these are the damage values, and obviously the Invader is going to be top because it has the most guns, and considering half the guns on all these things are multi-meltas, it's just going to be top because it has the most number of shots. The attack bikes are going to be right behind it, and then land speeders are actually going to bring up the rear. And I think, you know, this makes sense. 70 points on the land speeder, 85 on the Invader ATV, 60 on the attack bikes. So attack bikes versus land speeders, if we just jump back one slide, you actually see in terms of like survivability, the land speeder is a little bit better than the attack bike. You know, it's got that, it looks to be maybe in some situations up to 50% more survivable. I guess the toughness 6 helping against lower strength weapons, and in some situations just a little bit more survivable. But 10 points more for your land speeder, and obviously you do give up the twin bolt gun fire. So what I think I'm going to do with all this data then is going to try and divide it down to get like a raw damage per 100 points spent on the unit types and a raw survivability per 100 points spent on the unit types, because I think that's the only way that we can really determine just exactly what is going to be best, and then also what's going to synergize with whatever else you have on the table, right? Because the synergies are super important. So this brings me to our giveaway, and I'll put an awesome picture of the model that Evan's painted on screen now. And if you want to win the model, 3 simple things you have to do. If you are already a channel member, then you can skip step 1, but if you're not, hit the join button underneath this video and become a channel member. Then go into Discord and link your YouTube account in your Discord settings. That will give you access to our members only room in Discord, and then in our members only room, just post hashtag Origin Painting Champion, and if you are a patron, you are in that members only room as well, so you can just do that as well. If you're a patron, you don't necessarily need to become a channel member. So we'll pick the winner on Sunday the 18th on the Army List show, so make sure you're there, and you know, we'll give it away to a channel member. And thank you to everyone that has become a member so far. It's really, really appreciated, and it's really helped the channel grow. And you know, I've got a lot of video ideas for the future, so please stick around and we'll continue to pump them out. Right, so then we're going to break down damage efficiency per 100 points, and I guess the interesting thing here is there's no difference really between the land speeder and the ATV against the 2 big targets that we've picked, right? We're going to look at the heavy infantry and the dreadnoughts, and in both situations, against the heavy infantry, your land speeder is going to do about 1.58, the Invader ATV is going to do 1.56, and against the dreadnought it's like 3.17 against 3.14. So there's literally no difference between them. So I guess at that point it makes you question, I think, the pick of the land speeders, because land speeders are going to be less survivable. I mean, the one advantage to the land speeder is it can fly, so it can move over terrain and stuff, but it's going to be more difficult to obscure, and it cannot be healed by, you know, your Sanguinary Priest, and I don't know how a Tech Marine would ever keep up with a land speeder. So I think Sanguinary Priest with the Invader ATVs is actually still a good choice, and I think if you want to run the ATVs as separate units, that's actually a good choice as well, because remember, Selfless Healer can heal 2, so you could heal 3 wounds onto 2 separate ATVs, and there's almost no advantage of them being in a squad now, unless you're running a Chapter Master perhaps, because the Selfless Healer cannot resurrect them. So I think Invader ATVs for the points are pretty interesting. What we did say earlier is we thought that the attack bikes would still be the most damaging, and that is how it works out. 2.1 against the heavies, and against the dreadnoughts it's 4.2. It's 20 to 30% more damage, but it's about half as survivable. So, however, you can revive the attack bikes, which is a very big plus. So I think if you aren't running a Selfless Healer anymore, then I think Invader ATVs are probably the way forward, unless you really feel like land speeders are adding some sort of other dimension to your list. But if you are still going to run the Selfless Healer, and you do not expect the enemy to be able to wipe completely 3 attack bikes from a whole squad in a single turn, then I think attack bikes are going to be the best pick still, in terms of raw damage output and also in terms of survivability. But There are a few other options that people have mentioned a lot this last week, so let's compare them as well, just so we've got a full picture. But just before we do that, let's just talk on the survivability per 100 points. And this is what I had mentioned before. And yeah, I mean, the Invader ATVs are going to be the most survivable per 100 points spent. Not overly more survivable against multi-meltas against the attack bikes. However, they are quite a bit more survivable against something like an autocannon, you know, and the Landspeeder is okay here. I mean, it's an okay pick. I think if you have a Tech Marine and that's the way you want to go, then I don't think the Landspeeder is a bad pick. I think maybe you could have one of them if you just 70 points free or something, but there's nothing about the Landspeeder that's making me excited, you know, and I actually, in doing this math, I actually feel more excited about an Invader ATV. I don't own any Invader ATVs, but I'm thinking one of them that could just run around and do a little bit more work on top of the attack bikes I already have is maybe quite interesting. Also, I wanted to look at the Landspeeder Tornado because it has an assault cannon on it, and it comes in at 90 points, and it is, I guess, a valid option if you need some anti-infantry fire, and against the heavy infantry here, it's going to do not bad. Because it is 90 points, it's going to be less survivable than our Landspeeder in terms of cost per 100 points, and it's actually going to feel almost as strong as an attack bike in terms of 100 point cost if you shoot autocannons at it. So it makes it sort of less survivable, but it makes it not bad at all against the heavy infantry, you know, the Blight Lord Terminators that we talked about, and it's okay against the Dreadnought, coming in at 3.21, which I guess makes it probably, based on 100 points, very, very similar to both the other Landspeeder and the Invader ATV. So the attack bite is definitely your most damaging multi-melta shot from what we've looked at the moment, or points per multi-melta and points per damage. And I think that's what we kind of thought. So with the 5 points increase per model on attack bikes, it's probably justified. They probably are still very, very good here, and I think it's maybe 30% more damage they have, but they're probably quite a bit less survivable, like 60 to 70% less survivable than the other models. The advantage though is you can revive those attack bikes, and it's 60 points per model. Reviving them, if you can revive 1 or even 2 attack bikes throughout the course of a game, that's some immense value. And I don't think that the Sanguinary Priest going up in 20 points per, you know, up to 155 points is actually that big a problem. Like if he can revive 1 attack bike and maybe 2 other models, he's got his whole points back anyway. So I actually think it's probably fine at the 60 points per attack bike. I also wanted to look at Eradicators, because after the tier list last week, some people felt that we were overly harsh against the Eradicators. I think we put them in heavy support tier B. So autocannons against Eradicators, it's like 13.3 shots per 100 points, which I guess if you compare that against like the Landspeeders, it's slightly better. Against the ATVs, it's slightly worse, but against the attack bikes, it's slightly better. So Eradicators are sort of coming in that ATV level survivability. So they are very survivable for the points cost. Against autocannons, against the multi-melta fire, not so much, because each average dice roll of a d6 of a multi-melta will kill an Eradicator. So Eradicator is very good against small arms fire, not so good against big enemy heavy fire, and that maybe in a way kind of lets them down a little bit. So now for the damage output with the Eradicators, obviously in terms of basically they have a multi-melta, I know it's an assault melta rifle, but it's 2 shots at 24 inches, and it's only going to be 45 points per model, so you're looking at like 2.46. So this actually makes them more damaging than all the other units that we've looked at in terms of fighting heavy infantry. And then if we look at fighting the Dreadnoughts as well, they come in at 4.93, which is quite a bit ahead. You know, if we talk about the Landspeeder and the Invader ATV coming in at 3.14, and the attack bikes coming in at like 4.2, you know, I guess these guys are doing potentially for the points cost 20% more damage than the attack bikes, which were previously on top. So what do we say about Eradicators? I mean, survivability wasn't bad, damage is brilliant. The issue with Eradicators is you can't split fire effectively, right? Because like quite often I have a squad of attack bikes and I'll maybe put 3 multi-meltas at one thing and Stormbolters at the other, or we'll split some multi-melta fire, so you can't do that. And then also, I think the 5-inch move is quite limiting. I know you can advance them and shoot, but again, if you do that, you half their damage output. And if you half their damage output, then they basically become arguably kind of the worst of the choices here. Because if you have to advance them and you have to split their damage output, then they'll fall dead last. They'll be worse than all other choices: Land Raiders, ATVs, Attack Bikes. So Eradicators can be strong, but it's a situational play. So I don't mind if you maybe want to take some Attack Bikes and a squad of Eradicators, and you just have to play really, really smart. But I tried Eradicators a few times, and I just felt they were a little bit limiting for how I like to play. So, but I mean, I think this is why we put them in B, just because for Blood Angels, I think the strength of the Blood Angels is our mobility, right? And I think that with the fast mobility of the Attack Bikes, the Invader ATVs, or the Land Speeders, we can basically have those units at perfect range from the enemies, you know, so they can't be charged. We can screen them. We can have them wherever we need them for, like Psychic Fortress or Feel No Pain from the Sanguinary Priest. And we can do a lot of damage with this very mobile fire base. And I use this to great success with Attack Bikes pretty much in every game. And I love my Attack Bikes. I had no intention of dropping them really when they went up in points, but I did try a couple of games without them, and I think I just missed them too much. We're back to winning ways now. We're back to including the Attack Bikes, but I actually think Invader ATVs are actually a very interesting choice. I know a lot of people maybe don't dislike how the Invader ATVs look. I don't mind them, but I actually think that if I was going to add some more units to my army list, I think Invader ATVs, I think they're fine to include for Blood Angels. I think I prefer them to the Land Speeder, just because I don't think the Land Speeder necessarily synergizes with any sort of heals. And also it doesn't have the core keyword, right? Whereas the Invader ATV hold on to the core keyword. They obviously have a decent amount of attacks if we need to finish something off in close combat. And yeah, I mean, the more I look at this and the more we look at the numbers, then I think my personal preference is Attack Bikes first, Invader ATVs second, and then I think I probably prefer Eradicators over Land Speeders, but I can see why some people would like Land Speeders. I just think Land Speeders' job usually is to go down a flank or something and like pop some armor, and I think that leaves them very exposed. And you know, based on the survivability here, we know that they don't survive. Usually the way that you make your Attack Bikes survive, at least in my list, is I try and have them as Psychic Fortress Bubble or something else that gives them a 5+ invulnerable save. Then I try and have them hanging out near my Priest so that we get basically a 6+ Feel No Pain. And that helps a ton in terms of keeping the Attack Bikes alive and effective throughout the entire game. And I really think there's something to be said about keeping your units alive and effective throughout the game. You know, if you have your fallback units and keep them alive, and then maybe heal them up, like this is a valid strategy that can definitely be used by Blood Angels as we stand. So I thought I'd talk about a little bit about stratagems for just a minute, and basically the three mobile choices: the Land Raider, the Invader ATVs, the Attack Bikes. They can obviously hit and run, so if we get charged and we don't want to be in combat, we can fall back and shoot. We can also basically make us -1 to hit if we ever go for an advance. The Land Speeder can actually ignore mortal wounds with Armor of Contempt. I'm not sure I would do this. Maybe if you had a squad of Land Raiders and you got hit with a bunch of mortal wounds, it could be worth it. And then the Invader ATV actually is interesting as well, because it actually can take Transhuman. So Transhuman could potentially make the Invader ATV even more survivable, which I mean is nice considering it is also the most survivable unit as we currently have. And then we could also use Gene Rot Might if you wanted on the Invader ATVs. If late in the game you needed to make a charge with a few Invader ATVs and you definitely need to make some wounds, then you can pay 1 CP to make 6s automatically wound the target, which I think is very situational, but it's just worth keeping in mind, you know, if you've got some CP at the end of the battle. So as always, brothers, I leave the final choice on the list up to you, but hopefully that gives you a pretty clear picture of just what is good right now. So you've got your Attack Bikes, which we placed in the S tier for the fast attack list. They do the most damage. They synergize great with the movement of Blood Angels and the Sanguinary Priest, and they can be revived and healed. Yeah, and attack, you know, and they basically do the most damage for being the most mobile unit. We then have the Invader ATVs, which we actually placed in the crap tier, and in hindsight, I mean, I think that was harsh. I actually think these guys probably deserve to be in the A tier. We put a land speeder into the A tier, and there's nothing a land speeder can really do that this can't. There's more stratagems you can play on the Invader ATV. I think it's just maybe not many people bought Invader ATVs. But I don't know. I mean, I never bought them because I was obviously running attack bikes, but now I kind of fancy one of them. And I guess, like we said, some people really don't like them. Being able to get 6 attacks out of them as well is really not that bad. And yeah, I would put, in hindsight, I would move Invader ATVs up to the A tier. We put the basic land speeder in the A tier. I think this is fair enough. They do a bit of damage, and they survive. And it's mobile firepower. I just don't know if it necessarily synergizes too well with the Blood Angels. We put the land speeder Tornado into the B tier, and I think that's fair, probably just because, again, it's kind of expensive and it's situationally good, right? Like, if you need an assault cannon or if you need some more clear against like tough infantry models, then I guess it's situationally good. But overall, I think you'd probably be better just fielding the regular land speeder with just the multi-melta. And then finally, Eradicators, which we put into the B tier of heavy support, I think is fair because they just have too many negatives when they try and be mobile. They only get that 5-inch move because they're in Gravis. This means that, like, if you want to put them in an elevated cover position, if they ever need to move out of the cover, you're basically moving 2 inches. If you want to move more than 2 inches, and when I say 2 inches, because you need to move 3 inches down. If you ever want to move more, you have to advance, and when you advance, you're -1 to hit. You also lose half your firepower, and then if you ever need to split fire, again, you lose half your firepower. I do think Eradicators, when they were cheaper per model, were really, really strong. I think just probably because you could field so many of them, it didn't matter if you lost some firepower each turn. But they have been pushed up more recently. Maybe they're high B. Maybe they're almost at an A tier, in that they can do the most damage because it is the cheapest way to get multi-meltas on the board. They're just not mobile multi-meltas. And I think I always say that the strength of Blood Angels is our mobility. And right now, where we are in the meta, and some other websites are saying that we're like low B or C in terms of like the strength of our units, and we obviously got chapter approved 2021, which was, I think, really wrong in that it increased the costs of a bunch of our units when I actually think we were already low down in the meta. I think the only way we win games right now is using our mobility to the maximum of your advantage, right? You choose the engagement because all your units have jump packs. You choose what's in range because your bikes and that are so mobile. I think if you're not doing that, you will generally be losing games as Blood Angels. I think mobility is so important right now, and I think that's why this video is really, I think this video was really needed, and I really hope it helped you guys out. So normally all the slides are available for channel members and patrons just to download. However, this time, because there's so much data, I'm just going to throw it all into Discord. So if you guys want to download this presentation and look through any of the slides to help you pick your next army list and just get all my comments, you can 100% do that. And hey, the members are getting a chance to win a cool model this month, so hopefully they'll still be happy. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch to the end of the video. It's really appreciated. And as I said, likes are free. So if you want to hit the like button, it's also very much appreciated. If you want to see more Blood Angels content every week, then please consider subscribing. I hope to see you guys in the next video, and we'll definitely be live this weekend for a live stream. So come, hang out, meet the community, and hopefully see some of you guys there. By the blood are we made strong, brothers. Peace.